So, a few months ago, I made a video about what I think are the best battles in samurai movies, and things were going well. People seemed to enjoy the video until the comment section hit like an atomic bomb.
Jesus Christ.
First of all, the reason I did not include any of the Zatoichi fights is because 1. I've only watched the first Zatoichi movie, and that was when I was very young. Let's just say it did not make an impression, and since then I literally forgot about the character altogether. I had absolutely no idea that Zatoichi had this many fans until now, which makes it interesting because I've always wanted to talk about the tale of Zatoichi for various reasons, but right now, reviewing and analyzing every single Zatoichi movie seems like an even better idea. Now, for those who don't know what the heck I'm talking about, Zatoichi is a blind swordsman who goes around slashing people using everything but his eyes. He's like the samurai version of Daredevil. He's played by the wonderful Shintaro Katsu, and the character's stories take place in Japan during the Edo era. The name of the character is normally Ichi, and the word Zato is simply a reference to the lowest ranked blind person in that era. The first Zatoichi film came out in 1962 called The Tale of Zatoichi. The success of that movie allowed for an entire series to be born, and honestly, these movies are pretty consistent in terms of quality, and I would recommend them to anyone who likes this genre. The only problem is that you have to go through 25 movies and a remake. Yes, there are a lot of Zatoichi movies, and analyzing every single one of them in the course of one video would have been a nightmare. So instead, I've decided to split this topic in 4 parts. This video is only the first part and will focus only on the first 5 movies. That was the only way to ensure that every movie gets the attention it deserves. And obviously, at the end of part 4, I would rank them based on my own preferences, so stick around for that. It should be a lot of fun. Without further ado, let's dive in. As previously mentioned, this is the only Zatoichi movie I was familiar with at this point. But since it's been long since the last time I saw it, it almost felt like I was watching it for the first time again. This movie is the perfect introduction to the character of Zatoichi, a blind masseur who travels from town to town, offering his services both as a masseur and a swordsman. The character was created by novelist Ken Shimozawa. His first appearance came in the magazine Shosetsu Toyomimono as a minor character in the Futokoro Teiko series in 1948, before being revamped for his big screen debut, The Tale of Zatoichi. The movie opens with Zatoichi arriving at the Yakuza home where he demands to see the boss. While he awaits, he decides to take part in a game of dice. This scene is very interesting because it demonstrates Zatoichi's ability to use his other senses to navigate life. The Yakuza tried to trick him with tempered dices. However, he was able to detect their schemes thanks to his very sharp ears, as the tempered dices sounded differently. Something else we learned about the character is that he does not want to be treated differently or taken for a fool just because he's blind. And just like that, before even drawing his swords, Zatoichi shows a lot of character. And immediately, as an audience, we can tell why such a person would want to perfect his sword skills to make sure to never be a victim due to his disability. I really resonated with that aspect of the scene. After beating the Yakuza and taking all their money, the men decide they will not let him leave. However, just as they were about to follow him outside and attack him, their boss shows up. It turns out this is the Sugigoro Yakuza gang, and their boss, Sugigoro, actually hired Zatoichi as a weapon as they prepare for the inevitable war against the rival gang called the Shigezu. And at that point, I had mixed feelings. See, when it comes to visual storytelling, the golden rule is show, don't tell. Film is a visual medium, so describing stuff to your audience can feel a bit cheap because without truly showing me anything implied about any situation is baseless. And that's my biggest problem with this film. In the opening credits, we see Zatoichi massaging someone. Then we see him struggling to cross a very small bridge. Both have a purpose of showing what he does for a living and the impact his disability has on his daily life, which makes his skills as a swordsman even more impressive. The only issue is that we don't get to see his skills until halfway through the movie. The Tale of Zatoichi is not a very long movie, less than 100 minutes long, and for about 50 minutes I had to just sit there and believe that this blind masseur was one of the greatest swordsmen this world has ever seen. But on the other hand, I understand also that building anticipation for that first time we see him use his sword can be quite effective, but the payoff is not impactful enough to guarantee such a long anticipation. Compare that to the opening of literally any samurai movie aiming at making its main character seem invincible, and you will notice that this is not common at all. I would have personally preferred for a fight to break out after the dice game to establish Zatoichi as a force to fear from the get-go. It's not like it ruined the whole movie for me, but I won't lie, it bothered me. Following that, we spend quite a bit of time with the Yakuza, with Zatoichi just kind of being the observer. We even get a side plot with one of the Yakuza's daughter, Otane, and her brother. But the interesting part is when Zatoichi meets Miki Irate, a Ronin hired by the rival clan to fight Zatoichi during the war. They end up developing an unlikely friendship, which leading up to the third act could have easily sunk the entire movie, but the writers here made a very interesting choice of giving Irate a deadly disease. The Ronin is dying of tuberculosis, and even better, Zatoichi finds out about it way before the battle. The other great choice made here is the feud between Zatoichi and the Sugegoro Yakuza clan. That feud allowed him to withdraw from the war and reinforce its moral code as a warrior. He will only join the fight after learning that Irate was going to fight despite his sickness getting worse. Once he gets to the battlefield, he meets Irate, who asks Zatoichi to fight him, as dying in the hands of a great warrior is better than being defeated by some disease. That alone made the movie's climax such an emotional moment, and really built up the character of Zatoichi in all angles. See, Zatoichi is not a samurai. Hell, he's not even a Ronin. He doesn't even use a traditional katana. Instead, he uses a shikomi-zu, sort of a canned sword, because the possession of true fighting blades was formerly outlawed for non-samurai during the Edo period. He is simply a swordsman who seems to have mastered the way of the sword despite his disability. This movie is a perfect introduction to the character because it shows his personality as well as his code of honor. Ichi will always help those in need, and since he is mostly surrounded by criminals and crooks, he takes upon himself to keep the few good ones safe from any harm. His respect and appreciation for the Ronin Irate and his distaste for the Yakuza shows that he can tell the difference between an immoral and moral person. His relationship with Otane to me serves just to show that the good he sees in people is just the same as the good people see in him. At first I thought her asking him to marry her was kind of random, but then I realized that this is feudal Japan, and at that time women were not choosing their husbands, and in Otane's case, she was bound to marry some ruthless Yakuza and live a life of crime and abuse for the rest of her life. So marrying what she thought was a good man was her only way out of this life. But for Ichi, he does not see himself as a man worthy of love and believes his journey will be better explored alone. But there is obviously deeper reasons behind it. And that is also the thing with this movie. It gives us very little backstory. So we kind of have to either fill in the gaps ourselves or hope there will be more explanation in future films, which is a negative for me because people shouldn't have to watch 25 films to comprehend Zatoichi's motive as a character. These gaps in his emotional journey stopped me from caring as much as I should have. And now I remember why the movie did not make a big impression on me back then. But our journey is just beginning, and I'm sure by the end of it I will not only understand Zatoichi better, but I will probably appreciate this classic more. For now, I'm going to give The Tale of Zatoichi a 7.5 out of 10. Moving on. One year after the first movie, Zatoichi returns to the same area. I forgot to mention that Ichi made a promise on Irate's grave in the first film that he would return to visit him in a year's time. Little did we know then that it was a setup for this pretty solid sequel. Here we start the movie with Zatoichi being thrown out of a boat by criminals trying to steal it. Later on, he is attacked again by a bunch of Yakuza who are sent by someone to kill him. But just like in the boat, Ichi refuses to fight them, when suddenly a crippled samurai appears and dismantles the Yakuza. That is our introduction to the character of Yojiro. Already at this point, the movie is doing a much better job than the first one at introducing the character's skills from the get-go. And it is especially important for this character since Yojiro plays a major part in the plot. Now, afterwards, Zatoichi attends to a job where he is to massage a powerful lord. There, he discovers the lord's mental disability, which is a shame for his clan, and they are trying to keep it a secret. Instead of asking for the blind masseur to keep quiet about it, they try to kill Ichi on his way out. When their attempt fails, the lord's men hired local Yakuza to kill Zatoichi for them. And thus, a hunt for the blind swordsman begins. Ichi finds refuge in a restaurant where he meets 3 prostitutes, with one of them, Setsu, taking interest in Ichi as her father was also blind. She asks him to spend the night with her. Meanwhile, Yoshiro enters the same restaurant and Zatoichi has to hide to avoid being seen. Yoshiro immediately takes interest in Setsu as well, stating that she reminds him of a woman named Chiyo, a woman he once loved that left him the moment he became a cripple. He then demands for the woman to spend the night with him, to which the woman refuses as she said she was already promised to another man. Zatoichi then comes out of the shadows to reveal that he, too, once loved a woman named Chiyo who left him for another man the moment she realized he lost his sight. He was so enraged that he attacked the man who stole the love of his life from him. After that, Ichi ends up living with Setsu. And after dumping crucial information on us, the movie then decides to quickly move on to more pressing matters, which is more sword fights where Ichi has to dispose of people we know are no match for him. Now, I have not talked about the sword fights in these movies yet, because I'm gonna be honest, they are the least interesting parts of them. They are fine, for the most part, but the lack of violence and blood really stops these fights from feeling tangible. And I'm not even saying that blood is required for a sword fight to be good. Most samurai movies don't even have blood in them, but I feel like it's also the way these fights are shot. There's not much here that is interesting visually. I'm writing the script as I go from one movie to another, so maybe they get better or maybe they get worse, I don't know. But so far, the fights seem to be shot at wide angles with Zatoichi in the center of all of them. This not only makes the fights boring visually, but the movies aren't even able to hide that these men are not actually getting slashed. Compare that to Elite Samurai fights and you'll see what I mean. Anyway, Sugegoro, the Yakuza boss from the previous film, returns and discovers that Yoshiro, who had been staying with them as their samurai ally, was actually not a samurai but a criminal pretending to be one. He confronts Yoshiro and asks him to leave and asks one of his men to follow him. Yoshiro kills that man and the Yakuza decide to alert the authorities. On his way out of town, Yoshiro learns that Zatoichi is heading to the temple where Irate was buried and decides to follow him there. Oh, and remember Otane from the previous film? She's there too. She hears about Ichi and decides to head to the temple and warn him that the Yakuza are on their way there as well. At the temple, Otane meets Zatoichi and Yoichiro arrives as well. And that is where it is revealed that Yoichiro is actually Zatoichi's brother. Oh boy! So Zatoichi was in love with a woman named Chiyo, who left him for his brother Yoichiro. Ichi then later on attacks his brother and takes his arm, and now we are learning that Chiyo ended up also leaving Ichi's big brother because of his disability. Damn, I really hope we get to meet this woman. She sounds like pure evil. Anyways, the two men fight, with Zatoichi winning the fight. The authorities arrive and Ichi decides to flee with his brother. Despite Zatoichi attending to his wounds, Yoichiro will end up dying anyways, revealing to Zatoichi that despite him claiming earlier that he killed Chiyo after she left him, she is still alive somewhere, which sounds a lot like another setup for a future sequel, and I cannot wait for that. The movie ends with Zatoichi killing Sugegoro, the Yakuza boss, as he blames him for all the deaths he had to witness in the past year. Overall, this movie is inferior to the previous one. I like the introduction of Yoichiro and how the movie reveals another big part of Zatoichi's past, while leaving enough on the table for a deeper exploration in future films. I just think the plot is convoluted, kind of pulls from way too many angles and can't decide what plot it wants to focus on. Otane also feels forced into the story because she is just there. Her presence is not really justified, because she still doesn't end up marrying Ichi and the relationship has not changed one bit after this movie. And I feel like her presence reinforces my point of this movie not knowing what it wants to be or focus on. I'm going to give The Tale of Zatoichi Continues a 6.8 out of 10. Now, it's time to talk about my favorite of the entire series so far. Honestly, it was really mind-blowing how this third installment ended up being so good that I had to watch it twice before I could talk about it. In this movie, Zatoichi returns to his old village after leaving 4 years ago. At that point, what was really exciting was realizing we were about to learn so much more about Ichi, since we are literally going back to his hometown. On his way, he meets his childhood friend Tamekichi and his wife and child. While at an inn with his friends and a bunch of travelers, the group is robbed by a gang of thieves because it wouldn't be a Zatoichi story if trouble didn't follow him everywhere. What's surprising here is that Zatoichi does not fight the thieves and let them rob everyone, including himself. But wait, he's got a plan. He recognized the voice of one of them, and in the next day he calls out the thieves in front of the local clan leader with whom they are associated, saying he did not want to risk anyone getting hurt the night before, and that's why he did not do anything at the time. Ichi has now a fierce reputation, so no one does anything to oppose him. He promised the travelers that they were getting their money back with a little bonus headed on top by the gang's boss. Ichi then carries on with his journey when he is once again attacked by a group of men, with one of them claiming to be the brother of Kanbei, one of the Yakuza who was with Sugegoro and was killed by Zatoichi. Their fight is interrupted by Ichi's old master, Bano. Kanbei's brother says he will wait for his turn and will not let Ichi off the hook and won't rest until he's put him in the grave. But what's important here is that we meet an important figure in Ichi's life, his master, the person who taught him the way of the sword and has made him one of the most dangerous men in all of Japan. What I didn't expect, however, was for the master to be a complete asshole. This guy is a total douchebag, and now that I think about it, these Zatoichi movies seem to be a lot more anti-samurai than I anticipated. Ichi's master is a traditional, typical samurai from the Edo era of Japan, and is nothing but a corrupt and cruel human being. Yoichiro was able to disguise himself as a samurai while continuing his activities of robbing and killing people without any issues. The only good samurai we have encountered so far is Irate, and he was a dying man who sacrificed his honor for Yakuza money. I'm not saying that the series overall is anti-samurai, because it just seems to be a world built with the intent of having crime and dishonesty stand out, to make Ichi appear more as a Robin Hood type character than just a guy who enjoys cutting people down. All I'm saying is that this movie does not put much positive light on the samurai and their culture, and murder and greed seems to be what they are most associated with. Actually, speaking of that, what I love about this movie is that it establishes how much Ichi is growing tired of killing people, and if he could, he would change his ways. Anyways, we're introduced to Yayoi, Banno's little sister, who was promised to a samurai for marriage, but ends up falling in love with Zatoichi instead. She asks Ichi to marry her, and probably due to his regrets over not accepting Otane's proposal and just being overall tired of being alone and constantly fighting, Zatoichi accepts to marry Yayoi and promises to her to never fight again. Unfortunately for Ichi, Kanbe's brother shows up to fight him. Due to his promise, Zatoichi falls to the ground, begging for his life. Kanbe's brother gives him a choice. He has to roll the dice. If he wins, his life will be spared. If he loses, he will have one of his arms cut off. Ichi rolls the dice and loses. But Kanbe's brother realizes his sincerity and flips one of the dices, declaring Ichi the winner and sparing his life. Meanwhile, the master returns and Ichi and Yayoi express their interest in getting married. The master refuses and chases Ichi away, officially ending their master and student relationship. Zatoichi is heartbroken and goes back to his grandmother's house. He later decides to go to an inn for a drink. Meanwhile, Kanbe's brother stumbles upon Banno in the inn where the master was meeting with gang members. He makes a joke that Banno does not like, and the master chases him in the streets and stabs him in the back. Ichi arrives and realizes what had just happened. His master just killed an unarmed man, a good man who just spared his life. We later learn that Banno's deal with the gang was the orchestration of a kidnapping. The son of a local man was kidnapped for a sum of 300 ryu. He goes into the forest accompanied by the kidnapped man's elderly father, whom he kills in cold blood, an act witnessed by Yayoi, who is seeking Ichi in the forest. Zatoichi meanwhile encounters the gang in the forest and kills them all. Banno arrives and Ichi tells him that he did all this to stop his teacher from doing something this wrong. But Banno insists on fighting Ichi. The two men face off in one of the best duels this series has seen so far. Yayoi watches as her brother is killed by Ichi. Ichi cries, and as he gets up to leave, he tells Yayoi that it seems that he is just that kind of man. And as the sun rises, he wanders off alone once again. I cannot stress enough how much I love this movie. So far, it is the movie that has hit all the notes emotionally. It is the most personal story yet for Zatoichi. It is Zatoichi at his most vulnerable. What is heartbreaking is that Ichi not only had to cut down his master, he also realized that even his biggest hero was not immune to corruption. It is also the first movie in the series to not be in black and white, and honestly, they used the colors masterfully in this. Director Tokuzo Tanaka made some really interesting stylistic choices, like how he uses the blue sky as a backdrop when Zatoichi reunites with his childhood friend, giving the scene a sense of warmth and beauty, as if the director wanted to convey what Ichi was feeling visually. Just as him walking away from Yayoi after killing her brother is supported with a bleak sky and a bunch of dead grass. Again, it is all to represent Ichi's feelings visually, and that could not be as effective in black and white, so this is a very good use of the colors. His direction on the fight scenes is also on a whole other level, as he uses a lot of close-ups and utilizes angles to hide the stunts well. So in this movie, for the most part, whenever these people fight, it actually feels like they are getting slashed, and that is all thanks to great directing choices. Honestly, this movie revitalized my curiosity in the character of Zatoichi. Now we know that behind that big smile of his, there is a lot of sadness and tragedy. His brother, his master, his lover, were all corrupted by this terrible environment they operate in, and he doesn't feel the need to drag any good woman in this life of his, since in some ways he doesn't consider himself to be better than any of these people, because at the end, killing is wrong, and killing is what he does. Again, if you have watched my video on Yojimbo and the villainy of heroism, this is pretty much another example of that. Wait, what? You are telling me there's a crossover between Zatoichi and Sanjuro? What? Oh my god. I cannot wait to get to that. Oh my. Anyways, I'm giving the new tale of Zatoichi an 8 out of 10. Best of the series so far. Let's see what's next. I think at this point I would have been completely okay with the new tale of Zatoichi being the last movie in the series. I think it would have placed the series as one of the best trilogies ever, and ending on a high note is never easy. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how the series goes, we are in for 22 more movies. And that is made even more painful with the realization that Zatoichi the Fugitive is a major step down from the previous film. Before I get into why I don't like it as much as the previous 3 films, I just want to quickly get through the plot first. Once again, Zatoichi gets entangled with the Yakuza, but this time it happens a lot more and directly. The legendary actor Shintaro Katsu once again brings out a powerful performance. And for the first time, I feel like he does a lot more heavy lifting than in the previous films. We as the audience as well as the characters in the movie are now more familiar with the character of Zatoichi, which means that we are more ready to get in his head, to understand what he feels and why he feels that way. And as such, we can even anticipate his moves and his reactions. So the movie makes the great decision of bringing back Otane from the first 2 movies. She told Ichi that she was meant to marry a carpenter, but here we found out that the person she ended up with is a wicked samurai in the name of Tanakura. Again, I'm getting anti-samurai vibes from this, just saying. Zatoichi also encounters Sakichi, the new heir of a Yakuza family whose kindness is seen as weakness by other Yakuza, and Nobu, a woman who Sakichi is in love with but cannot marry because her father wouldn't allow it. And just like that, we have a doomed romance, Yakuza politics, and Ichi's past love life catching up to him. And the result of that is a pretty boring movie, filled mostly with dialogue and terrible pacing, which is a true shock to me because the movie was directed by Toshiro Tanaka as well, the man who made what is so far my favorite Zatoichi movie. What the hell happened? The movie does not pick up the pace until the 3rd act. I nearly lost interest until the setup for the final showdown, where Sakichi tells Ichi that the Yakuza have taken Otane hostage. He rushes to the old abandoned inn where Nobu grew up as a child and sees that Otane is safe and well. When he arrives there, he realizes it is a trap set by Otane's husband to kill Ichi and get the reward of 300 Ryu, which is the bounty now on Ichi's head. Soon after, the Yakuza surround the place and attack. Otane goes outside and pleads with her husband not to attack Ichi, that she loves him and that she wants him to stay alive, which will not happen if he faces Ichi. However, Tanakura does not listen to her as he wants the bounty on Ichi's head at all costs. Otane mistakenly draws his sword and he kills her instantly. Nobu sees this and tells Ichi. The news sends Ichi into a rage. He bursts outside, slaughters most of the several dozen Yakuza before facing Tanakura in what I consider the best one-on-one showdown in the series so far. Better than his fight with Irate and better than his duel with Bano. During the battle, Ichi's sword is broken and he stabs Tanakura with a dagger hidden in the sword's handle. As he dies, Tanakura reveals to Ichi that he did not know Otane, but only had a false image of her, that the ambush was actually her idea to get the reward. The film never reveals whether those claims are true or not, only that Ichi does not believe them. He will forever keep that image of Otane in his head, an innocent girl who was married to a corrupt samurai against her will. The movie concludes with Ichi placing Nobu's hand in the hand of Sakichi before he, once again, wanders away, alone. Like I said, the third act completely saves the movie for me. But even the third act has something that completely took me out of the film, and that is the fight choreography. Again, I don't know what happened, but compared to the previous film, this is a complete letdown. The third act had the potential for a big spectacle similar to Arakiri or Sword of Doom, but the execution is really lackluster. The sword is clearly not connecting. The series so far has had this kind of fights before, but was doing a decent job hiding that with camera angles, especially in the third movie. But here, it is way too obvious, and because of that, I cannot take this fight seriously. I mean, come on, man. Looks like a bunch of people pretending to be hurt, and it's really annoying. I don't have a problem with the lack of blood, but no contact and no semblance of impact? That's just wrong, man. The fight against Tanakura might be the best in the series so far, but how can this movie have both the best and the worst fight of the series so far? It makes no sense. Anyway, I will probably not remember this one by the time I'm done with all the movies, so it's best to just move on. I'm giving Zatoichi the Fugitive a 5.5 out of 10. If it wasn't for the final act, it would have been even lower. Zatoichi on the Road is another good one. Let me just put it out there immediately. The movie follows a similar plot to the very first movie, and it seems the series wanted to go back to its roots. And for the record, this movie opens exactly how I wish the first one did, with Zatoichi winning a game of dice and being attacked for it. He disposes of the gambler easily and establishes his superiority as a swordsman, except we already know what he's capable of at this point. If this happened early in the first movie, it would have made that movie even better in my opinion. But I can't help but wonder if this scene is not a callback at what they wish they did in the first film. Anyway, later on, Zatoichi is being escorted to Doyama to meet a crime boss named Ikozu, who desperately wants to meet the legendary Zatoichi. On the way, they are attacked by the men of Ikozu's rival, who had been tracking them, and despite Ichi killing the bandits, his guide is also killed. At night, he encounters a group of samurai looking for a girl. They leave and Ichi discovers the man they have just mortally wounded. He asks Ichi to protect a girl named Mitsu, the girl for whom the others are looking, and escort her to Edo. He finds the girl and decides to keep her safe until he could help her reach Edo. During the travel, Mitsu reveals that she is being hunted because she stabbed the local lord in the face when he tried to rape her. Again, anti-samurai themes, baby! It turns out Mitsu is from a rich family from the capital city of Edo, so anyone who comes across her and Ichi is trying to steal her away. I'm not going to get into the plot because it seems a little formulaic at this point, and I'm tired just thinking about it. However, the interesting part here is that the series at this point has fully embraced the idea of Zatoichi being the Robin Hood of this very corrupt world. The goal of these reviews is to understand Zatoichi and what his character stands for, and I believe at this point it is pretty obvious. Ichi is good at differentiating the good from the bad, those who need help and those who are just as corrupt as the system. So at this point he has turned himself into a knight in shining armor, willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It is made evident when he first leaves Mitsu to be carried to Edo by herself, when he thought she was out of danger, which was not true since she gets captured and used as a bait. But at that moment, he genuinely thought she was safe, so he refused to go meet her family because he doesn't want any reward or praise. He just did the right thing because that's his only goal in life now. Later on, after defeating all the crime bosses, he still doesn't take the girl back home, but sends someone he trusts with her, keeping only a souvenir as he wanders off alone. Once again, it is very weird watching movies like Zatoichi on the road in 2023 because it is a recurrent theme nowadays. We have seen this type of characters so much now that it could feel like nothing special, but within the context of this series, it is very much fresh, And it is not only a good story narratively, it is literally a breaking point for this character we've been following for 5 movies now. You have scenes where people recognize him as soon as he splits a candle with his sword. Zatoichi. We have witnessed the growth of his legend, and this movie is the beginning of his journey as the mythical blind swordsman moving from town to town, trying his best to put his skills to good use and help those in need. I'm giving Zatoichi on the Road a 7 out of 10, and I cannot wait to see where they take the character next. It is very interesting where the 5th movie left off, because now there is nothing much left in terms of backstory, except for Chiyo. Oh, I hope we get to meet her at some point. But right now, it seems like most of the stories will be focused on the people Ichi helps instead of Ichi himself, which could go either way, so I'm curious to explore the rest of the series. I still believe these movies would benefit a lot from some graphic violence. Even without the blood, there should be semblance of impact, but I also understand they are the product of their time, and I cannot judge them too harshly in that regard. If you made it this far in the video, thank you, I appreciate you. I'm trying a lot more ambitious ideas for my essays, so if you like this, don't forget to leave a like so that I know this is the kind of deep dive that you want me to do more of. In any case, I have a lot more movies to watch and review, so goodbye for now. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.